This project is for part of our Jurassic Jeep build, and for that we have Jurassic Jack here to participate. If he wants to come say hello anytime, he wants to come say. Anyway, so chances are you didn't come in here because you wanted to see Jurassic Jack.
Say my name!
Yeah, you're not going to have an option. So what we're going to be trying to do today is to try and find the sweet spot for what it's going to take to build a low-cost and reusable paint bay inside of a double garage. So this is a project I've kind of been thinking about for about 6 months, how to paint a car. I'd love to do it outside. I have a nice carport I could tarp off, but it's January and it's freezing cold here in Canada. So how am I going to do this? And so this was the idea that I came up with, and I'll show you in a couple minutes what the design looks like. But the concept is, right here we're going to paint your Jeep. So you can see there's a piece of your Jeep and there's a lot of other pieces. So we're actually not going to be painting a complete Jeep in one piece, although you could use this design for that as well. But we're going to be painting in here. We also want to protect the car. We want to protect the garage, which if you've watched some of my videos, it's pretty nice in here. Why are you being weird? So the different options, the extremes that I've seen is people just kind of string up plastic around the walls. That's kind of one way, and then a couple box fans, and they say we're good. Other folks I've seen build complete structures, like picture like a complete shed inside of their garage. So we don't want something permanent like that, right? We want something that we can reuse.
There's van there, boxes.
Box fan.
Fan, so yeah, it's a fan there.
It's literally in the window over there. Anyway, so my strategy is to try and build something for a reasonable price that has some level of structure to it, so it doesn't rely on the existing walls and it's freestanding. But a couple requirements: I want it to be modular in that I can make it bigger or smaller. It obviously has to be effective in keeping the dust out because it's kind of messy in here. And it also has to be reusable, so it's something I want to be able to take down, put away, and then put back up again in the future. So nothing is really throwaway in this project. Everything is something I can take out and use again. And so I think I'll come up with a clever design that's going to allow us to be able to do that. So any words of wisdom before we get started on building this paint bay?
Maple syrup.
Maple syrup. All right.
Maple syrup.
That's terrific.
Maple
Thank you
syrup.
for that. So that's what we're doing. I'm going to flip over now to Digital John, and he's going to show you a virtual design drawing on what we're up to, and then we'll get into building this thing. All right, so here it is. This gives you an idea of the paint bay itself. So you'll notice it's approximately 16 feet long, a little over 8 feet high, and a little over 10 and a half feet wide. And the whole idea is that we have a basic, really minimized wooden structure. I've seen a lot of guys who use PVC conduit. The problem with PVC is it's not very strong. And you have to, it's like Lego, you know, you got to break it down to nothing every single time to store it away. So what I wanted to do is actually build individual panels. So just to give you an example here, so this panel here, you just pull it out. So I basically just have to build 4 panels that look just like this size, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the 2 on the ends, which are actually 10 by 8. And this is sized to fit in my garage. You could make it any size you want. So I basically just took, basic timber. I got 8-foot studs and 10-foot studs, and that's what I'm going to build this from. If you wanted it to be bigger, you could do 12s, you can do 16s. And the really cool thing is, since there are multiple pieces in here, so I could choose to get rid of one. So this whole section doesn't need to be here. I could just make it 8 by 8 or 8 by 10, pardon me, and that would be good enough. You could stretch this and add a third bay. So it's modular, and all you end up having to do is you have to store these things. So you need a place to store an 8 by 8 foot square, which happens to be, for me, just on the outside of my garage. So that's kind of the idea. Just to give you a concept of scale here, we'll zoom out and grab my Jeep just sitting here. And so that's roughly the scale on this particular design. There we go. So now it's sitting in there. So as you can see, it's pretty tight. If you were going to paint a whole vehicle, this wouldn't necessarily fit. My Jeep's kind of sitting in the air, unfortunately, but you get the idea. On the front side here, I've got a door, and so this was basically an actual door I just picked up at the thrift store, kind of the Restore Habitat for Humanity store. So it's 3 feet wide. You want to get the widest door you can. But this entire wall is designed that it can be hinged open. So you can add hinges on the side and then just pivot the whole thing open to get a vehicle in and out. In my garage, you'll see in a second, that's really difficult, getting the vehicle in and out. So with the 36-inch door, I can actually get each one of the individual components of the Jeep in and out without much problem, without having to disassemble the whole thing. On the top here is for the ventilation. So this is where the inlet is. So these are just going to be a number of high particulate filtering furnace filter fans. And then down here I have 2 box fans. I chose to put that like this. You get a bit of a downflow as the air is coming through, because most paint bay booths, the air is intended to flow from top to bottom, and I can't do that, but I can kind of go from top-ish to bottom-ish on the other end. So now I'm going to flip over and actually show you what it looks like when we put it inside the garage. All right, so here we are with the bay inserted inside the virtual garage, and as you can see, there's not a lot of extra space. In my garage, I've got the lift, of course, and that is kind of the issue. And so I have it sandwiched right up against the one wall, pretty much right against the back garage door, and then with a little bit of room in the front. So this should give me enough room to move the pieces around that I need to get inside, and it'll also keep the Jeep, which is sitting currently on the lift, out of the way. And I can even still use it parking, because it is winter here. We haven't had cold yet, but it's probably coming, and it would be nice to have that on select nights of the year. You can also see the fans vent out the main garage door in the back. So it's possible I can actually open the garage door if it's nice out. And if it's not, my intention is to put a big cardboard box there. So any particulate that does make it through these filters that are on the fans will blow into the cardboard and not just blow into the garage door and, you know, get on my nice new Volvo. So that's what it's going to look like. So I'm going to go to work and film it. We're going to be building these different sidewalls each. We're going to be covering them in a 3mm plastic, and then ultimately building the ends, putting the door in, and then covering the roof with a little bit more dense 6mm plastic. What's not shown in here is there's going to be supports in the corners to make it sturdy, and I'm going to put a few cross members on the roof because a lot of my painting is going to be involving hanging components with fishing line.
Okay, so first things first, I have to cut all the boards to exact length. So I set up a jig here on my chop saw, and it was actually amazing how far off they were. I thought when you bought, you know, a 10-foot board, it showed up at 10 feet, but it turns out it's not even close. Here's the 7 that I actually purchased, and you can see they're nowhere close to the same. So you are going to have to make these match for this box to work properly. Alright, so I'm assembling the first of the 4 sidewalls, and I'm bracing it, and I'm using my air nailer for these. And onto the end wall here. So this is the one where the fans would be, and unfortunately I missed some of the footage of that, but there it is put together. And now the other end wall, so that's where the filters are going to go on the top and where the door is going to go on the bottom. And now I attached this 2x4 with screws because I felt that it may need to move and be adjusted to fit the door, because if you've never fitted a door before, it is a lot of work. So here's my door, and I picked this up at the surplus store. It's a little too tall, so I'm going to cut it down. It is 36 inches wide, which is nice and wide and get all the Jeep parts through it. And I'm just setting up my saw here to cut this off. So the inside of this is mostly just cardboard, to be honest with you. And so I took the old bottom piece, pulled it out, sanded it down, glued it here, and hammered it back in. And it just kind of mashes the cardboard out of the way. And a test fit, it's pretty good. I did have to adjust it a little bit. And now I'm adding the backing for the door, or the door jamb. Can't remember what this is called. And so I'm just framing it out myself and then gluing it and nailing it in. The glue is mostly for the air tightness. I don't want to have air holes anywhere. So getting all glued into place. And now starting on the plastic. So this, I believe, is a 4mm plastic, which is a little better than the 3. And so I just started by clamping it on the ends. I tried some different ways of doing this, as you'll see, and this one wasn't quite big enough to wrap all the way around, so I had to staple it on the sides, which was sort of unfortunate. And once it's stapled, now I'm going to go around and put silicone seal inside. So this is where your air tightness comes from. And stapling again on the other side, and then I'll add some more silicone. So this is sort of the practice throughout, is making sure all of the places where it could leak had silicone seal. And now I'm adding silicone to the bottom, as you can see again, and then stapling it, and I will press it down with either a wheel or a board here. Alright, just finishing up the staples on the top. And so this will be the back end, which goes towards the garage door. And there I'm adding the silicone and giving it a good press. Alright. Okay, and now I'm starting to make some of my sidewalls. And this time I decided to lay the plastic on the ground, and then I just put little sticks underneath the wood so that I could get the silicone in advance. And so I'm just doing the corners now, because those are the parts that I can't get access to later. And dropping it down, and then stapling it up. So you just got to get these taut, you got to get these tight. Try not to tear it. I found the 3mm was a little too thin for this, and that's why I'd recommend the 4mm. And moving on to number 2. Same process. I started to find that this worked pretty well. The nice thing about having the grids on the floor like I do is you can actually see some of the tape there. Because I know exactly where to lay the plastic when I had to cut it. And so I get it to be the right size every time. So you can put tape on your floor and that would help too. So now for the top, I ripped this 16-foot 2x4 in half, which was no small feat given that I couldn't do it in my garage because it's full of Jeep stuff. And now I'm stapling the board onto this. And sorry, onto the plastic. So this is that extra thick 6mm plastic, 16 feet wide that I bought especially for the roof. And so now that's all stapled up, and I'm just going to put it up here and get it out of the way. And next, so this is the door end. I just took whatever plastic I had left and stapled it on here to seal this up. Again, it works better when you wrap it around and staple from the back where you can, but you can't always do that. And then getting the silicone seal in there for the air tightness again as well. And you see I run a little roller over it to make sure the silicone seal seals properly and it's not sort of pushing out. And now putting the hinges in for the door, just kind of measuring out where those are going to go and then attach them to the door. And so I ended up using a router to just carve these out. You could also use a chisel. I thought I'd do something a little fancy with a jig and a router, and it worked okay. And then putting the door in. Worked pretty well. Just be careful, this thing will fall over when you're not paying attention. Oops. And yeah, it looks pretty good there. So now I'm putting the doorknob into the door. Picked that up for about $10 at the thrift store. Seems like it works pretty well, teaching Jack how doorknobs work. And chiseling out the other side. And it works. Yay. Now it's time to put down the floor. So this was just a tarp I picked up for about $40 at Princess Auto. It's I believe 16 by 20. So I'm attaching the one side right onto the baseboard, so I'm actually screwing it into the baseboard. So it's just not going to dance around on me. And then once I pull it tight, I'm putting the two outside walls in place. And in order to hold these up, I'm going to attach them with clamps. And then I'm going to drill them and bolt them together with carriage bolts. So these are the only ones that I actually bolt through, and the rest I use screws, just because this wall needs to be extra strong at that seam. And doing the same thing on the end wall, and here I'm using to go to 3.5-inch GRK fastener, so a heavy duty screw. You want something that's really going to suck the two together. So pick an appropriate screw as long as it'll do that. And then over here to the other side, doing exactly the same thing. Clamping it first, getting it all lined up and happy, and then screwing it with the 3.5-inch screws. And it didn't take many, about 5 screws, and that was quite solid. And then doing the other far wall here, same process, drill the hole, carriage bolt, clamps to hold it in place. Not working too bad actually. And now I'm putting in the final wall with the door. It would have been a little easier if the door wasn't in there, but your results may vary. And then again screwing it in as before with the clamps. So it really went together quite quick. I did this basically by myself. And pretty happy with that. The structure is standing. And I am pretty happy about that. Alright, well, it's up. At least the 6 walls are up. You really want help for doing this, but I did do it myself. There's a couple casualties. I got a rip up here in this one. I don't know how that happened. And I got a little rip in that corner over there that I can fill with tape. Making sure the garage floor is not quite level, so getting the corners flush at the top was a little bit difficult. Although getting them flush sort of end to end wasn't actually all that bad. And it really wanted to stand up pretty well. Other than the one with the door in it, I'd probably recommend putting the door in after, you know, fit it, make sure it works, and then put it in. I've never actually fitted a whole door myself before, so that was a bit of an adventure. There's a lot of tolerances and stuff you gotta screw with, so if you could buy a door that already has a frame, that would make a lot of sense. But anyway, here it is. It actually looks really good. Looking forward to doing some work in here. So I gotta get it patched up, and then I gotta put it on the roof, and then I've gotta add lights, filters, and fans, and electricity, and then it's ready to use. So we'll keep at it. So to attach the roof, I started on the far side of the room, and you notice I have those wood shelves up there. That prevented me from getting access from the top. So I actually had to screw the first board in from the bottom. So that was a little bit annoying, and I didn't really think that through. But you shouldn't have a problem like this. Either way, it does work. You just kind of got to hold the board down, screw up from the bottom. Because ultimately you want to squeeze those two tight together so you don't have a bit of an air leak. Because I can't tape that seam because it's up against the wall. So that's the one seam that I wasn't going to be able to tape. And now roll it across like this. Pretty simple. Notice I have the support across the middle there, which I added, which keeps this thing from falling down. And it also adds a lot of rigidity to the structure. And screw it down in the corner. And start to screw it down all across. So you notice it's actually pretty tight, and it's holding down pretty well. Now I'm taping the floor to the wall with just packing tape. In my particular garage where I have to add the plastic floor, I ended up having to do this. If you just have a cement floor, you can find some other way to seal it to the ground. And here I'm adding just a little piece of L channel plastic that I picked up from Lowe's, and this is where I'm going to put the filters. So just nailing that in place with the equivalent of like a roofing nail. And there's my filters. So these were about $4 each. They're normally $25, but I found them at the thrift store. They're really, really good filters. All right, so the bay is done, and as far as I know, it's 100% sealed. The filters have been installed, so we just finished there. I put in one fan here, and it's blowing out, so negative flow. So I don't know what's going to happen when we turn it on, but we're going to find out. Jack's going to plug it in. Please don't electrocute yourself. There you go. And here we go.
So when will it be happening?
Well, no, let's turn it up. See what happens. Assuming the walls are kind of sucking a bit. They are a little bit, but not a lot, eh? Huh. I kind of expected more. You can see it's kind of bowing in a little bit. So there you go. We now have airflow. Look at how the floor is coming up. That's interesting. Why is it doing that?
Die, you beast! Die!
I guess if the floor is coming up, we have a pretty good seal, right? And we must have pretty taut walls because they're basically, yeah, they're coming in. They're definitely coming in, but they're not doing anything like that. So if the floor is coming up, we definitely have negative pressure. Because the air pressure in here is less than the air pressure in the garage. Savvy? Makes sense?
The flow is moving up!
The floor is lava!
Ah! Have you just gone crazy?
And here I just threw in a quick time lapse to show you what the floor does when it's rising. So it really comes up quite high. Alright, so here we are in the completed paint bay, Saturday afternoon, very sunny. So I've got this, it's January, but I have this south-facing window, so the sun just blasts right in here. It's very, very bright. I don't even have the lights in the garage on right now, to be honest with you. So that's how bright it is. I'm going to add some more lights in here, just, you know, to kind of get the different angles, but the white floor makes really all the difference. I didn't even plan that, I just picked the tarp that was on sale. I might recommend a little thicker tarp if you're doing this, but the white is definitely the way to go. I'm still running the air line in, so I'm going to have a coupling on the outside so I can use my air for other things when I want to. Have an air hose in here that I'm going to use. This is actually a desiccant line, so you can buy these so it actually removes the water from the air as it's kind of coming into the bay. I'm also going to be adding a filter as well to take any particulate out. And I'm going to be adding a few more wooden beams to the roof to hang things from. I'm not sure if you can see the hooks up there already, but I'm going to be hanging most things to paint them. So I'm going to be putting on a few more hooks. I'm going to be adding a little bit of a table over here to work from, so I can mix my paint and set the guns and do things like that and so on. But generally speaking, I do most of my work out of the bay because this is a clean zone. And I've been keeping it sealed up, you know, whenever Jurassic Jack stays out of here. So that's where we're at. I'm going to wrap these things up, hopefully doing some painting this weekend, and you'll be able to see some of that. So stay tuned. Alright, so now I'm installing the lights, one in each of the four corners. You see the one on the left side there is already installed, and I'm just running the power across to the right one. And then they plug in the back. But basically these were just T5 fixtures I got from the thrift store. Really not anything special, but just something to get some light around the midpoint of the bay rather than just from the roof, as well as for the reflective floor, which also helps. And now I'm installing the fans, giving them a little bit of a test run here and getting all the wiring in place. I put a power bar to turn things on and off with these. And here's a couple more of those filters that I picked up to put in front of the fans that just so happened they were the right size. And they're about a 23.5 inch each, pardon me. And then up in the ceiling, I'm putting on the hanging beams. So these are the wood beams with hooks in it that I'm going to use to hang all the various parts of the vehicle. So it just gives me some more options when it comes to painting. And now this is going to be sort of my exit box. So when the fans blow out, I'm blowing them into this box just so they can vent properly. And if there is any paint particulate, it'll end up hitting the box rather than hitting the garage door. Now I'm putting it in place and just going to lean a couple boards up against it here to hold it in place. Alright, so we're going to do a test here. I just got some spray paint. I'm going to spray in the air. We've got the fans running and the box in place. So it's just normal red spray paint. Spray it in here. So we'll see what happens. See where it goes. See if it ends up on the floor. So let's take a little look-see here. Follow me, camera? Alright. So I can smell it right now for sure. And there's nothing on the floor. So it's not going to the floor. It's not going to the walls. Same with the filters. So you can definitely see there's red all over the filters. So here you can kind of see it's definitely red. So I mean the filters are filtering, right? And if you look at the floor, there's nothing. So yeah, so this is pretty exciting. It's actually working. So I'm going to swing around the back and see if there's any red in that box. It's really hard to tell, but I can't see any redness inside the box. So the fans just kind of blow into the box and then it vents upward, and I kind of thought by venting it upward, the gravity will kind of maybe keep some of the particulate out of the garage, but we're not going to know. I mean, if I start seeing a whole bunch of paint on the garage door, or the ceiling, or even just back here on the floor, I'm going to know that there's a problem. But for now, it looks really good. So we're going to do some painting and see how it turns out. So after I've sprayed the spray paint in the booth, I came outside of the booth and I can smell the spray paint. I don't think it came out when I opened the door. I actually think it came out through the fan. So something about the propellant in the spray paint is escaping the booth. So that's a little bit of cause for concern because that is a really high quality filter that it's getting through. So it must be propellant or something about the paint because none of the pigment got out. So all the red is trapped in the filter and there's none in the box. So I just have to keep an eye on that. Probably got to run the exhaust fan in here while I'm doing this, and probably going to want to keep the mask on inside the garage as well. So let's hope this works. So to solve this problem, first I'm going to make a styrofoam duct, which is going to channel the air from the booth to the garage door. I ended up building the booth further away from the garage door than I'd originally intended, so that's why this thing is almost about 2 feet wide. So there were pluses and minuses to that, but ultimately this will work regardless of how big it is. So I'm just kind of making it square, and then I'm going to put a center support in the middle to give it a little bit of added strength. So working with styrofoam isn't exactly the most fun material. You could do this with wood, but this is quite a bit cheaper, and you can cut it with a knife and not make a lot of sawdust in your nice clean room. So that was my plan. And then back here, so I'm making these 16-foot wide panels that are going to go on the top and the bottom of the garage door, and so you'll be able to see exactly what that looks like here in a second. And it's got a C channel, which just happens to be the same size, which I sized up very intentionally. And putting a little weather stripping along here as well to help seal it to the door. And so there you get the idea, the concept of where that's going to go and where this is going to go. And it kind of just wedges in there real nice. And same thing up on the top as well. Just kind of holds itself in there on a couple little L brackets. So here it is all set up. You can see the fans are running, venting outside. It's about minus 10 today, so it's pretty cold. And then we look kind of here. You can see it's fairly well sealed throughout. The top isn't quite as good. We're not seeing as much sealing up there, but I think there's some things I can do. As you can see, there's a slight gap. So this basically has to push in, which I think I could do with a piece of wood. So anyway, so that's what we're doing. I think it's going to work pretty well. So now it's time to try some painting. So I got my HVLP gun out here, and I'm putting on my primer onto the doors that were prepared, and you can see that in some of my other videos. And going with the gray here, and you'll kind of notice the filters in the back are sort of turning gray from the red that they were before. Overall, I'm finding that the filters do a great job of filtering, but once you install the duct to the outside, the filters on the back are really not necessary unless you want to preserve sort of the look of your fans, which I really didn't care about. But nonetheless, you notice it's not too cloudy in here. I did notice over time that the filters would plug up, so you do have to rotate them through or just remove them, which is what I ended up doing. And I was pretty happy with that result. And then it really vacated the fumes fast. And now it's time to put on that beautiful sand beige. It's working pretty good. So the air supply ended up working really well. I didn't end up ever having water in the lines. Really happy with the performance of the gun, and I'm shooting it around 25 psi here. And then with a quick flash coat at 30 psi when I'm done. And so the results are looking all right. All right, so wrapping up here, I've done my final test, final spray. I've done a few sets of doors now. The results are impeccable. So there's absolutely no dust or grit or marks of any kind on the doors, except for the ones that I make when I run into them. Key point, just don't do that. The booth itself, the integrity is good. The air vacuum is good. The negative pressure seems to be working. The filtration is good. So by adding the vent to the outside, that's mandatory. So I originally started thinking that the filters would do the job, but they just don't. They're good. They do a great job of taking out the paint, but they don't take out the fumes. And then the garage fills with fumes, and it gets really, really bad. Right now I'm only running one fan. It's about half an hour after I finish painting these, so they're still tacky. As you can tell, I'm not wearing a mask. There's absolutely no fumes in here, and that's just with the one fan running now. I shut off the other one, and it's minus 15 Celsius today, and I'm still keeping heat in here. So I'm getting pretty good filtration and decent heat exchange. It's not too bad. All right, so I'm going to give you an overview here of the materials at this point. And keep in mind, these are in Canadian dollars, and it's during COVID, and the price of softwood lumber is through the roof for some unknown reason. Okay, so on the lumber side, I picked up 29 2x4s, 8 feet long, to make most of the walls and some of the supports. 7 of the 10-foot variety, which were mostly for the ends and the cross member in the middle. And then the single 16-foot one that I ripped in half for the roof. So that was $258. I had one roll of 4mm plastic sheeting that I got off Amazon. I did think it was 6mm in the beginning, but the receipts say I got 4. I would use this all around, and so I wouldn't buy these 2 rolls of 3mm, which I got for $40. I'd just get 3 of the 4mm. I got that surplus 36-inch door for $40. I would recommend you get a door with an existing frame.
It's a lot easier, and I was having issues with the wall racking, and then it wouldn't close and it wouldn't seal properly. So you'd either have to support the wall or just get a door that has its own built-in frame. You pay a little bit more, but it's worth it. I did pick up the 4 fluorescent lights. Those were about $15 each. 11 furnace filters, which is just the whole supply that they had. I was getting those at $4, so why not? Doorknob for 10. Hinges were like $1 each. They're $82. I ended up having to get the styrofoam C channel to build the vent outside. So if you didn't have the same environmental concerns that I did with the cold, you could save the $140. And I did have a couple box fans already, and now they're covered in paint, but that's okay. They were free. And there was just some assorted stuff that you probably just on hand, like staples, screws, tape wire, and a lot of silicone seal, actually, a few tubes of that. So the total was $580. So that's what I ended up paying to build this paint bay. Again, you could do it for more like $440 if you didn't need the vent to the outside the way I'd done it.
One of the things that I've discovered is it's best to do all your cleaning in here. So I've been cleaning outside the bay, and that's been really stinking up the rest of the garage. The painting, obviously getting the aerosols in the air, that's one problem, but the other issue is just where you do all your work, cleaning and mixing the paint. And I think the mixing of the paint's okay, it's really the cleaning, because that stuff's just kind of vile. So I'm going to start doing all my cleaning in here, and bring another garbage bag in here. And other than that, this is good. You know, I expect this thing will have a nice long life, and I'll be able to use it again and again. I even think it's transportable, so if other people I know want to use it, that works as well. So I hope you have luck with this. If you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the comments. I'm happy to reply. If you're in the Calgary area and you want to borrow this thing, let me know. And I think I'll borrow, rent it out, and figure something out. So thanks a lot for your time, and like, subscribe, and hopefully you enjoy some of the other videos too.